In this lesson I'm going to cover parts of the terrain module. I'm going to cover how to put in a slope and a plateau, hills and valleys and berms and trenches. I'm going to talk about paths for our driveways and our paths and our pads and our retaining walls. The last option on the terrain module is the site boundary, which I'll cover in a separate lesson. So firstly, when we go and put in and we slope the site and we put in hills and valleys and berms and trenches and plateaus, what you've got to do is think about this realistically. Now, in my opinion, I'll repeat that, in my opinion, this module is basically there so that you can shape your site, how you're going to shape it, and put pads in and retaining walls so that you can show your client how it's going to end up. Please don't think that you're going to get your survey or your disclosure from your surveyor or your client and match up the contours exactly. You're not going to do it, and it's not meant for that purpose. So for this exercise, what I want to start with is a slope. Now basically with a slope, you've got to think about the direction. Now with a roof or with a ceiling, with a surface, in Envisioneer all the arrows point up. So when we're putting a slope in, when we pick a point and drag at the direction we want the slope, it's going to go up in the direction we're dragging our mouse. Okay, so just for this exercise, let's say we've got a 1500. I'll just make that 1500. Hit OK. Now this terrain basically is set to 0. You know that by going to your settings, your program settings, going to terrain, and you'll notice the base level is set to 0. So now if I go and do that 1500 slope and I say, well, okay, from this point, let's say the front corner of the block, and if I drag my mouse, take my ortho off to the back corner, and from my disclosure I can say from that point to that point is a distance of 1500. So therefore now I've got some contours lines showing on the terrain. Those contour lines are spaced at 500 increments. So basically what you got is that first one is 0, because remember my terrain is on 0. This one is 500, that's a metre, that's 1500 high. So now I'm still in the command of the slope, and you'll notice the arrow pointing up on my mouse there is up. If I go from that point there, which is a metre, and come up here and pick another point, so that's going to give me another 1500 rise from that point to the end of the arrow. So there's another 1500. So now I've got 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. That's 2.5 high. Okay, if I go and have a look at that in 3D, hopefully you'll be able to see it. If not, play around with it yourself on your own computer and use your orbit and turn it around, and hopefully as I sort of come around to the edge, you'll see the thickening on the edge. So over here, so that's I've started off at 0, and this point up here would be 2500. Come back to a 2D plan view. Now hills and valleys, I'll do something ridiculous here and type in 6 meters so that we can see it. This zenith will allow you to drag the bar so it's a pointy zenith or it's a flat. So you can, I'll just sort of bring it a bit pointy. So that 6 is a positive, so it's a hill. If I put a minus in front of it, then it becomes a valley. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to put a hill there. See what it's done? And I'll put another hill up there. So that's a hill or a valley. If I come to the next one, a berm or a trench, now that's basically going to be, again, I'll do something stupid like 5 meters, and the zenith is the same type of thing, so we'll make it pointier, and that's a length. So if I come from that point to that point, now that is the berm or the trench. Now again, we've got a plateau. A plateau, I want it to be 1500 high, and I want the plateau over here. So if I put my ortho back on, I can just sort of run around and create the shape of the plateau, and it builds it up. If we go and have a look at that, it'll be quite ridiculous, but you should be able to see what's happening with the terrain module. Now you can sort of go and play around with those tools to give you whatever you want to achieve as far as shaping the site's concerned. Now, if you use the pad will cut at a level platform. So if I want a pad around the house, I just draw the pad around the house, and you'll find when I finish, the contour lines going through that pad area will disappear, simply because it's cut the pad out, and now I've got a level platform, as you can see, cut down so the house is fitting into it. Can you see that there? So it's cut in. Alright, so hills and valleys, use a plus for a hill, a minus for a valley. So if I go and whack a minus in there and whack that in there, you'll see I've got a big hole in the ground, so it's quite powerful in what it does. Berms and trenches, same thing, plus and minus. Your plateau, your slopes, and your pads. Naturally, retaining walls, we can then just draw your retaining walls wherever you want them going around the building. What I want to do is I want to come back and do paths in the next lesson, and then we'll cover our site boundary in an additional lesson also. So go to your heart's content and have a play around with the terrain, but please note and remember, you're not trying to emulate every contour exactly on what your surveyor gives you. What you're trying to do is to shape the site with the slope, the cut and fill, the retaining walls, etc., to show your client what it's going to look like when it's finished. That is what I believe it is for, in my opinion. Thank you.